Hi friends! Oh goodness me. Somehow, 5 years has flown by, and I thought it would be fun since I've been tracking my stats for 5 years now, from January of 2021 all the way till December of 2025, and we continue on, but I figured to lock it in to one spreadsheet so that it didn't feel too overwhelming with stats. I've got 5 years of data to share now, which is fun. It's fun to reflect. I love data. I love having little spreadsheets. I love seeing my little graphs go up. It's very satisfying. So of course, that's what we're going to talk about today. Let's talk about, oh boy howdy, everything in my tracker. I don't have like a plan of organization of how to like talk about all these things. So we're just going to kind of go top to bottom and like see how this goes. Buckle in, let's talk about the things. Starting off with like how many books I read. So I read, including DNFs, 976 books in 5 years. With DNFs taken out, I've read exactly 950 books in 5 years. That's absolutely crazy. When we get to my 1,000, like, what should we do? What should we do when I read 1,000 books? I feel like it's gotta be something special, something monumental. I read too many books. My biggest reading month of the 5 years was May 2025 when I read 46 books. Escape the Readathon really did me wonders. It was getting out of tax season, having the free time, having the mental capacity, and being a ghost on Escape the Readathon. Oh boy, great reading month. I remember most of those reads. I know I binged like Emily Henry, I binged The Naturals. Like I had a really solid reading month that month as well. So it was a lot of fun. I had a great time. Breaking down the 950 books though, I read 75 in 2021. I read 145 in 2022. 2023, I read 240. And then 2024, 260. 25, beat it by 1, 261. Let's go! Very proud of myself for that. I have DNF'd in total 26 books. This is the books that I felt worth tracking because I made some kind of progress, not the books that like I briefly started and then immediately put down because it just like wasn't the vibe. And I would say most of the time that I DNF a book, it's just because it's not grabbing my interest enough to make me want to push through, or it's just not the right time. I feel like a lot of books I put down, I'm willing to return to or come back to if somebody can make a convincing case, but there's not too many. I try not to DNF books. I'm not great at it, so what can you do? In total, I have read, oh god, I hate big numbers, 118,162.5 pages. Why is that 0.5 pages? That doesn't make any sense. I don't know why I counted a half page. That's not normally how I count pages. And then for hours, I've read 3,644 hours and 30 minutes of audiobooks, which makes sense seeing as audiobooks make up a vast majority of my reading, but it is nice to be like, wow, I've read a lot of pages. I would say that I'm not like the biggest physical or e-reader. I'm trying to get better at it every year, read more and more if I can. But it's, more time consuming and also a little bit more taxing on my brain. And if I have brain fog, reading physically ain't gonna happen. Like the dyslexia hits real hard. So it's very hit or miss. But my best pages read month was actually August of 2023 when I read 5,926 pages, which is my all-time best. And then audiobook, pretty sporadic, but my best month was also May of 2025 when I read 138 hours and 15 minutes. The average time it takes me to read and finish a book is about 9.5 days. And that's because some books I'll finish in 1 to 5 days and other books I will pick up and then put down for half a year. So the range is vast, but on average, about 9 to 10 days. I do read a lot shorter books. I like a shorter book. I like a novella. I like a graphic novel. I prefer my books to be a little bit shorter. I'm, again, also getting better at that. I'm trying to improve it a little bit, but I do like the short books, which is why my average page length for a book is 117. And my average audiobooks, which is, I would say, closer to like a 300, 400 page average book, would be on average 330 minutes. But huge asterisk on that is I listen to books anywhere from 2.5 to 3 times speed, depending. When I started listening to audiobooks back in 2021, I think I was listening at 1.5, and I've just slowly been creeping up since. I think in 2024 is when I was able to get up to 3 times speed comfortably and to not feel like too much. And obviously that's going to change based off like if there's sound effects or if the narrator has a different accent. I often will try to start books at 2.75 because that's like my most comfortable, depending on narrator, speed up or speed down if I need to. But I like starting at 2.75, and then like once I'm a little bit more settled in the world, because I read a lot of fantasy, then I'll usually bump it up to 3 once I feel like I know what's going on, I've got a grasp on things, and I can understand the narrator. I just have to get settled and used to it a little bit. Out of the 950 books I read, only 31 have been rereads. That's so low. But I do see myself rereading things. Like you can see right there, I'm going to reread the Fallen series. My Fallen video will be out next or sometime soon this month. So I'm rereading the first 3 books. So I'm increasing it every year. I'm reading a little bit more and more rereads. But generally, I do like to pick up new books. I'm not the hugest rereader, but there's definitely times for it. And then okay. Back to the audiobook thing I was mentioning earlier. 55% of my reading is done by audiobooks, which means I've listened to 552 audiobooks. Mixed media being my second largest stat, where I've read 23%, 227 books. Immersion reading, where I'm listening to the audiobook and reading along at the same time. That's my favorite way of reading. It's my preferred way. If I have the time or am able to get my hands on the physical or ebook, that's my favorite way of reading because I get to practice reading with my eyes while not having to stumble my way through words. And then coming in third place, interesting enough, is ebooks with 15%, where I've read 149 ebooks. And that does make sense because Kindle Unlimited, I'll pick them up, and I like reading on my Kindle. And then my lowest stat, 7.7%. 77 reads, my physicals. Yeah, that makes sense. I'm not the best at reading just physical books on my shelf without an audiobook. I can do it. Like, I've read Jay Bree's A Crown of Oaths and Curses, no audiobook. I raw dogged that thing, and that's a big, chunky book, and it's like one of my, I did that. So I am capable. I think I just get too intimidated and caught up with myself where I'm like, Sam, you're not good at it. Why not just wait until you have an audiobook and you'll get through it faster? I gotta shift that mindset. But all the books I read have been in English. I have started saving graphic novels in Spanish on Libby, so hopefully that'll change soon in my next bunch of stats. But primarily I read novels. 706 of my reads have been novels. I think the only other stat that I really care about is novellas, 140, and graphic novels, 74. Manga is a separate thing, and that would be 29 mangas. So I feel pretty good about that. Yes, I'm reading shorter books, but they are still novels. A lot of the audiobooks I listen to are the larger books that I just, avoid. So yeah, I'm content with majority of my reading still being novels. Not that graphic novels and mangas don't count as reading, they do. Audiobooks do count as reading, don't fight me. Actually, do fight me. Go fight me in the comments, I don't care. For my personal self, I want to make sure that I'm not just only reading novellas, only reading graphic novels. I want to make sure I'm also reading novels, But I like reading novels just because it makes me feel like I'm doing what I should be. It makes me feel good. Not a judgment on anybody else. And then we get to the series, and I'm not sure how accurate this series is versus my actual series tracker. So if you're curious about that, I updated my series tracker of the 120 series that I'm in the middle of. But this says that I've started 256, which sounds about right. I've read 133 sequels. I've finished 62 series, which seems a little bit low. And it says that I DNF 41. I'm gonna be honest, I don't go really back through the tracker and update this as much. I kind of update my year-to-year trackers. And then once they go into this master spreadsheet, I kind of just leave them. So I definitely could go through and update the series portion and be more accurate. But again, I have a whole video with the series audit, so who needs it? Oh my goodness, so many readathons. I've participated in 447 readathons. I've had 48 buddy reads, and I have participated in 95 book club picks. That feels pretty solid. I love readathons. I talk about them all the time on my channel. Every month is how many readathons can I cram into my reading? I just think it makes it so fun to pick books and to stay on track. I could be a mood reader, and I am still to a degree, but I really utilize prompts to lead me in a direction of what I'm interested in picking up and kind of give me some guidance if I don't have video plans or whatever, because they're fun. I like to gamify things. I like having an element of surprise, if you will. So I really appreciate readathons for that reason. I hope to have one someday. I feel like everyone's done things, so I'm what more could I possibly do? My most common readathon is Buzzwordathon, hosted by Books and Lala. Makes perfect sense. Followed by Bookymon, which is hosted by Meredith. I am a co-host. I haven't really talked to Meredith about the 2026 stuff just yet, but I've been a Bookymon zoologist, so I've been up to date on that, and I was reading for a bunch of things. And then the third most popular one is actually Horrorathon, which is no longer around. It's on a hiatus, possibly indefinitely. We're not sure. Ashley has been hosting this, and it's kind of like a book club, but it's a 24-hour horror readathon where there's also a book club pick. And I've always enjoyed that one. So it's a bummer that's on hiatus. I totally get it though. But that was my third place. And then for book clubs, obviously, it's no surprise. Half of my book club reads are because of the Literally Dead Book Club. Kayla's kind of the reason that I started the channel and got back into reading because of Buzzwordathon. So it makes sense that I was I like horror books. I'll just read whatever she says. But then after that, we've got the 4Bs, the Big Booty Bitches Book Club, hosted by Aaliyah over at the Library Dweller, which is where I read a lot of cowboy smut, apparently. So I love that for me. And then once we get into the nitty-gritty of the book stats, we've got 15 different genres that I've read across, which I don't know how many like genres there really are, but I've read across 35 subgenres, and those vary day to day of like what I consider a subgenre or not. Obviously, my biggest subgenre is romance, because fantasy romance is huge, and not every fantasy romance is romantasy, but I can't get into that conversation right now. The next most read subgenre is horror, because fantasy horror is my favorite genre blend. Oh, I love it so much. So that's my favorite. But when we get to the actual genres, to no surprise, my top 3, which I talk about all the time, anytime I introduce my channel, fantasy, horror, romantasy. Those are my 3 genres. Ever since romantasy like became a proper genre and a tag for things and like pitched as romantasy, I picked those up. But what those used to be was just a fantasy romance book. The lingo's just changed a little bit, but I would say, yeah, fantasy and horror are like my top 2. I love them so much. Okay, so I have this very large wheel because on my tracker, I have a way of tracking my thoughts throughout my reading process. So I have the elevator pitch of like how I'd pitch a book to you or a friend quickly. This is what I would say. And then I have 25, 50, 75, 100 thoughts throughout the book that I just like think of, predictions, whatever, those go there. And then I got character names, and then I have tropes. So this is my trope wheel. And I call it a trope wheel. It's pie chart. My most read trope is also technically a subgenre. It depends on how you classify things, but it's retelling. Not really a surprise. Retelling at 54 books. We've got haunting at 36 books, and then we have enemies to lovers at 39. Are all of those the truest enemies to lovers? Probably not, but it's fine. We're gonna let it be. The tracker is what it is. I also started recently tracking the POV for books, if it's dual, single, multi, omniscient, or limited third person. I have not been doing that all 5 years, so the stats are not accurate, but I would say majority of my reads are single POV. And then moving below those trackers, I've got my characters, the race of the beings in which my books are about. Most of them are human. That makes sense. But the second largest would be fae, which I prefer would have been vampires, but what can I do? I also really prefer it to be mixed fantasy. I love when there's multiple types of creatures going on. And then I also am tracking vibes of the book of like, it's kind of a way of setting in some way, but also just like the vibe, you know? One of them is space yeehaw, so it kind of just depends on the mood of the book. Also, like, small town and urban are popular, dark academia in general is popular, like military school settings also popular, but it can also be more like broad, cozy, gothic, etc. So I keep track of the vibes. Oh, I'm a little ashamed by this stat. I have only read 62 translated books. I could improve that. I could definitely do that better. Okay, my camera battery is flashing. 1 second. So you guys should leave me your favorite translated works down in the comments so that I can increase the stat, because, woo, not great, not my best. And then recently as well, I think in 2024 is when I started tracking who recommended me the book. Where did I get the book from? A lot of books is just like a lot of talk, and there's not like a specific person or thing. But then there's those books where specific people mention it and I go, I'm putting that on my one to read. And I associate that book with them. So that's when they kind of go on this spot. This feels like a video of just me being a fangirl of Kayla, but Kayla is who I get the most recommendations from directly. Our tastes typically align, and so I pick up a lot of things that she reads. Makes sense. I think in second place, Cassidy over Covers with Cassidy, a lot of romantasy picks that I get from her. And then my friend Eliza. Oh no, just kidding. Allie beat Eliza. Allie do is read, good friend. I love her so dearly. She recommends a lot of books to me. So she's recommended 10 directly that I've picked up specifically because of her videos. And then I also am tracking like why I'm reading the book, not only who recommended the book to me, but why I picked it up, whether it's readathons, which is a good vast majority of my readings. 26% of the books I read is because of a readathon, 17% because I just randomly decided to pick it up, and 14% for specific video plans. And then the rest because it's on my TBR, my physical TBR, because I have an ARC from NetGalley. All of those things also qualify. And then I also track how I got the book. You know, hey, we all love to support our libraries, don't we? Don't look at anything behind me. We love to support our libraries, which is why I've read 308 Libby books. Just don't worry about the books behind me, because I only have read 216 of my owned books. Well, 216 plus my book boxes, which is 50, so 266 is actually better. A decent chunk of my reading is because I get it from the library. I also clearly own a lot of physical books, but I tend to reach for them a little bit less than like library books because there's like a waiting list. People are trying to get it. I don't want to be an asshole that's just like holding up lines. But yeah, I would say that most of my reading comes from Libby just because it's so convenient and helpful. And then we get into the lengths of my book. The most of my audiobooks are in the 3 to 5 hour range at 342, which is pretty big. But my most common reading size book is 350 to 400 pages. So that makes me feel good that like, yes, I skew shorter books rather than longer books, which is why my average is so low, but I mostly pick up 300 to 400 page books. So like, I mean, technically I mostly pick up smaller books, but my biggest stat is the average novel length. So I take that as a win. I don't really care about publishers. The graph never looks good. I only really care about the self-published, which means I've read 75 self-published books, which does not include like independent publishers. It is just simply like the author uploaded it to Kindle Unlimited kind of thing. And not even like some Kindle Unlimited authors have like their own indie publishing house, like just for themselves. Sometimes it's just their name, sometimes it's something fancy, and I mark those as whatever Goodreads has as the publisher. So if it doesn't say like their name, indie self-published, like then I don't count it. So this is probably understated a lot, but yeah, it's fine. It's close enough. Oh god. Okay. So now we can talk about the thing that I don't talk about too much on the internet, because why would I? I track my average ratings. Now, I typically finish a book and rate it either immediately or I sit on it a little bit and rate it a couple hours later. My average rating per my tracker and per most of my like Goodreads and story graphs say my average rating is 3.5. I would say when I look at my tracker and I think about some of these books, I tend to lower the rating after the fact, like months to years later, like depending on how well it sticks with me or if it was really actually that good. Reread sometimes affect it. So I have a column separate from my average rating for my retrospective rating of thinking back on the book. How do I gut reaction feel about it? And I tend to lower my rating a lot. So per that column, my average rating is 2.5, which ain't great. Not fantastic. You know, you live and you learn, but also a lot of the things that I thought I really liked back in like 2021 is different from how I would feel now. And the retrospective is years later at times. So it's fine. It's okay. I'm cool with a 3.5. Like, I'll take it. That's technically my average rating because I go solely based off how I felt, entertainment, and gut-wise by the end. The retrospective is just kind of like a fun for me. How do I feel now, modern day 2026 Sam? And then the next stat we've got is adult versus young adult. I read 61% adult, which feels really good. I know romantasy and horror is probably the main reason why. I would say most of the fantasy that I pick up is probably leaning young adult, which is why it's still 33% and pretty high. I'll happily take that. I like reading adult. I am an adult. I'm 26. By the time you see this, I'll be 27. But I don't think that age means that you shouldn't read young adult. I find that I enjoy a lot of young adult novels still to this day. I think it just depends on like the writing style and if it's a good book. I don't think that it being young adult makes it bad. So that's my little hot take. And then I also track the year books come out. The year in which of publication. My most read year is 2023 at 162 books, which is pretty cool. Makes sense. I'm pretty good at staying on top of new releases. So seeing as I started reading in 21, I've read 93. 22, 127, 23, 162, 24, 139, 25, 96. So I kind of dropped off with 2025, but now that we're in 2026, I'm sure I'll read that additional 40 whatever 2025 releases and it'll be average. So I feel like that makes sense that within like the 2 year of it releasing, I'll usually pick it up and then kind of move on to the next years and slow down reading the back stuff. But one of my goals is to read more backlist books because I have quite a few backlists on my shelf, but also just there's some try and true booktube staples that I have not read yet. So I would like to get to those. And then I track my disability rep, my queer rep. 54% of my books have no queer in them whatsoever, which is pretty good for me. Like I would say reading 50% queer, hell yeah. Main characters would be at 30% present in the book, like side characters would be closer to 17%. The most type of queer, the type of gay would be just queer in general, meaning either like the full cast is queer or there's multiple labels that can be put onto a character, followed by just gay, just lesbian, bisexual. Makes sense. And then we also have sapphic in there, which is slightly different from lesbian, and it depends on, you know, the vibes and the tone and what the synopsis says and how the characters identify themselves. And then for disability, this is where it gets like kind of sad. Only 14% of my reads have any type of disability rep present or main character. I would say that it makes sense just based off the industry. It's not as common to have disability representation. I would like for it to increase because this is also including mental illness representation, not just like physical. So could be better. There's a few books that I like know off the top of my head that I'm planning to read that'll increase this, but not nearly enough. The biggest one, of course, like I already mentioned, would be mental illness. Like that's the most common disability in my books. And now the last little stat block for this video would be the stats on the authors that I'm reading. I track if they're queer or not, which would be 20% yes. A couple of unknowns in there because I don't dig too deep. If they're not like openly queer on the internet, then I don't know. I also track if the author is a POC or not, which comes out to about 31%. I would say I would like this to be higher, kind of like my gay representation in media. I would like it to be more close to 50-50, but I would say a third of my reading being authors of color based off the publishing industry and like it being a predominantly white industry makes sense, I would say. I could definitely improve on my end of just like trying to read more, but I'm okay with 30%. I could definitely improve, but I'm also okay with 30%. Like that feels like a good average, but yes, something to keep in mind of for the future. Breakdown of the POC authors that I've read, mostly Japanese, realistically, but just Asian in general at 148, followed by Black authors at 69, nice, followed by Latinx authors at 50, and then there's a mix of other things, Arab, Indigenous, multiple authors, spelling errors, because that happens to me as well, mixed authors, etc. And then we can move on to the author's nationality. 50% of the authors I read are just flat American. And that doesn't count like Colombian American or Filipino American, Korean American. It's just like straight full American. 50%, which is, you know, also for the standard of publishing the industry, makes a lot of sense. I'm okay with this. I think it's fun tracking like where authors are from, but is notable. Following American authors, we've got Australian authors, Japanese authors, English authors, and Canadian authors. So that makes perfect sense. And then we've got new authors and returning authors. I read a pretty nice split. I would say 63% new authors that I've never read from before, and about 36 to 37% authors that I'm like coming back to, like Aaron A. Craig, Stephen Graham Jones, like authors that I'm coming back to time and time again. And then we've got debut authors that I've read, 224. That feels really good. I like that. I think that's a fair amount. Not too many, but like enough. And then I read 637 authors in total, which is so many people. I read 637 people's works of art. When you really like think of the numbers, like I can't picture 600 people. Like my coworker and I can do 600 tax returns, which means I know how much that is. It's a lot of people. That's a lot of people. Wow. My most read author, I think, at 13 is Ali Hazelwood. Which like, go off, girl. Followed by Natsuki Tayaka, author of, over here, Fruits Basket. All 4 mangas. All 4? That's 12. Samantha, get together. All 12 books. That makes sense for one author. And then I think after that, very hard to read this graph. I'm going to be so real with you. I think next is Helen. That looks right to me at 0.9 at 9 books. We've also got Stephen Graham Jones with 9 books. So Stephen Graham Jones and Helen Shore tied for 3rd place. Congratulations, authors. And then I'm just going to throw up my little maps. These aren't great representations because like it's so American dominated that you can't really see all the cool colors, but I can show you the states map because that one makes a little bit more sense. Obviously, most of the authors that I read from are from California or New York. That's the most common, followed by Texas. And honestly, surprisingly, a decent amount of Oregonian authors because I myself am also from Oregon and I live in Oregon, so it makes sense that I would like to pick up authors in Oregon. I'd say they do a pretty good job. Courtney Good comes to mind immediately. I enjoy my little Oregonians. So, oh boy. I just threw so many numbers at you. Did you keep up? Did you retain anything? Was this interesting? Do you care? I have questions. I would love to know what you thought of this. It is interesting to see, like, my reading has stayed pretty much the same. Like, obviously over the years, like, I've refined my taste. I found more better ways of tracking. Like, I've added onto this spreadsheet so much from the first year. I've also just find what tropes I like, what authors I've liked. I've found, I wouldn't say that I've really niched down, but I've found things that like appeal to me and make me happy. And I like to pretend that each year I'm getting a little bit better at picking up more books that I'm going to give higher ratings to. I like to think that this 2026 year is going to be like all good ratings, she says, with an average rating of 3.25 in January. But it's besides that. I am really hopeful that like through exercising reading, I'm getting better. I'm getting faster. I'm able to read an ebook and comprehend what I'm reading, and it doesn't take me forever. It's still daunting to think about picking up a book and not having an audiobook as like a crutch, but I also know that I can do it. And I think the most valuable thing for me to come out of tracking my reading for 5 years is to like remember all the things that I've been able to read and the memories that I have with specific books. Like, I might not own all of these books and I might forget a lot of the ones that I've read because time, space in the brain, whatever was going on in my life at the moment. But even if I can't remember the specifics of the plot or how it ended, I can often remember where I was at in my life when I read the book. And that, I think, is truly special for me. And I've proven to myself that I am a capable reader and that anyone can be, and that things like dyslexia shouldn't stop you from enjoying something. Like, full stop. I did not read as a kid nearly as much as I do now. And it was mostly because I was ashamed of my reading speed and my reading comprehension. And I didn't think I was good enough because nobody explained that it was something you could practice and get better at. And it's not perfect. Some days I can talk like a normal functioning human. I would say today, pretty full functioning in the sense that like I can talk, I'm using better vocabulary, and I am stumbling a little bit, but not as bad as usual. And so tonight when I read, I'm gonna have a good reading session because I've got the brain juice. Tomorrow I might have more brain fog and talking is going to be hard, and I'm not going to be able to conjure up different words in my mind when I'm talking, or when I start reading, I'll stumble on a word and have to sound things out. Dyslexia comes to different days. It's never the same, and you can't predict what's going to happen. You can just do your best. And I've really come to terms with that a lot over these years. And I just am proud of myself to say, like, I read A Crown of Oaths and Curses by myself in a couple of days, no audiobook. And I keep bringing that one up specifically because it just felt like such a big accomplishment at the moment for me. Like, I was so surprised with myself that I was able to do that. I also read its sequel pretty quickly. And it just feels good to reflect on it and just be like, yeah, I've done that and I can do it again. And it's emboldening me as I'm coming into this new era in my life. And as I continue doing BookTube and enjoy collecting books and reading books and sharing it with other people, I'm proud of myself and you should be proud of you. And it just feels good. It feels nice. It feels good to be in this place where it's like elementary school aged me would have been so surprised to hear that I've read 950 books in 5 years. I probably read like 3 to 10 books in a year when I was growing up. Even in high school, I got an Owl Crate subscription and I read Carval, and that's like what kickstarted my love of reading again in high school after middle school and elementary school, of like reading things, but also lying about reading things because I didn't want to like share that it was taking me a long time or that I was struggling with something. And so I would pretend that I had finished a book when I hadn't. I did read a lot of my school works. I think I only spark noted 1 book in high school. So get off my ass. I did read my required readings, but it didn't feel the same. I didn't have the same spark and joy when I read A Midsummer's Night Dream because Shakespeare is hard. Sorry, I'll say it. But anyways, I'll keep talking in circles. I digress. But it just feels good. And I'm proud of myself to have read so many books, to know that it's possible with a full-time job, plus working on YouTube and having somewhat of a social life and like doing cool, fun things with myself. It's a cool place to be, and I'm happy and content with where I'm at. And let me know down in the comments what I should do for my 1000th book. If I should do a scavenger hunt like I do for my reading goal each year, or something else, something fun. Pick a book at random. Like, let me know what I should do for my 1000th book. I would love suggestions, but that's going to be all for me because I'm going to keep rambling if I don't. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you for hanging out with me. I hope you had a nice time here, and I will see you in my next video very soon. Bye!